Lee Minho sat at his control station, watching the endless stream of data flow across his screens. The monitoring station's sentinel floated quietly in the darkness near Neptune, far from Earth and the busy life of the inner planets. It was a lonely job, but someone had to watch for signals from deep space. Most days, nothing happened. Today was different. The alarm buzzed softly, and Minho straightened in his chair. A new signal was coming through the deep space array, stronger than the usual background noise. He adjusted his headset and listened. Strange sounds filled his ears, not the random static of space, but something that sounded like words. Alien words. "Commander Kim," Minho called across the station. "I need you to see this." Kim Doyen walked over, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. 20 years of watching the empty darkness had made him expect nothing but silence. "What do you have, Minho?" "Unknown transmission, sir. It's repeating the same message over and over, and it's coming from everywhere. Dozens of different directions across the galaxy." Commander Kim frowned. In all his years at Sentinel, they had never received alien signals. Earth scientists had been listening for centuries, but the galaxy had always been quiet. "Are you sure it's not interference from our own ships?" "No, sir. The pattern is too complex, and it's using frequencies we don't use for communication." Minho played the recording. Strange sounds filled the control room. Clicks, whistles, and tones that no human throat could make. "Get Park Hana up here," Kim ordered. "If anyone can figure out what this means, it's her." Park Hana arrived 30 minutes later, still in her sleep clothes and looking annoyed. She was the station's language expert, a small woman with sharp eyes who knew more about communication than anyone else on the station. "This better be important, Commander. I was having the first good sleep I've had in weeks." "Listen to this," Kim said, and played the alien message again. Hana's expression changed immediately. She sat down at Minho's station and began working. On the computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "This is incredible. The mathematical patterns, the repetition structure, this isn't random. This is definitely a language." "Can you translate it?" Kim asked. "Maybe. Give me some time." Hana worked through the night, running the signal through every translation program the station had. The other crew members brought her coffee and food, but she barely noticed. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen as numbers and symbols flowed past. 18 hours later, Hana stood up from her station. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. "Commander, you need to see this." Kim looked at the translation on her screen. The words made his blood run cold. "The Devourers have awakened. All civilizations must flee the outer spiral arm immediately. This is your only warning. Evacuation ships are being sent to coordinates listed below. Prepare for immediate departure." The cycle begins again. "Devourers?" Kim asked. "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but look at this." Hana brought up another screen. The message includes a list of star systems and species, hundreds of them, and there are details about evacuation procedures, safe zones, emergency supplies. This is a galaxy-wide evacuation order. Minho was monitoring the incoming signals. "Commander, the transmissions are getting weaker. Whatever is sending them is either running out of power or getting destroyed." Kim activated the communication array to contact Earth. The message would take hours to reach home, and hours more for a reply to come back. While they waited, the crew continued analyzing the alien warning. "There's something else," Hana said, quietly. "The message includes coordinates for protected species. Civilizations that will be evacuated to safe zones. I've been checking the list against our star charts. And humanity isn't on it. According to this message, we're not worth saving. In fact," she paused, checking her work again. "According to the database attached to this message, humans are already listed as extinct. They think we died out centuries ago." The control room fell silent. Outside the windows, the stars looked suddenly cold and distant. Kim's communication system finally chimed with a response from Earth. The voice of Admiral Chen filled the room. "Sentinel Station, we've received your transmission. Similar signals have been detected by monitoring stations across human space. Earth Command is analyzing the data now." "What are your orders, sir?" Kim asked. "Continue monitoring. We're seeing something else out there. Massive energy signatures moving toward our sector. Whatever these devourers are, they're not just a legend. Over the next few days, long-range sensors began detecting something that made the warning message real. Huge ships were moving through space, bigger than anything humans had ever built. But these ships weren't human, and they weren't heading toward the galactic core like the evacuation message suggested. They were coming toward human space. More disturbing were the other signals the sensors picked up. Alien evacuation fleets were passing through nearby systems, but they were avoiding human planets completely. Massive ships carrying millions of refugees flew past Earth's colonies without stopping, without even sending a greeting. To them, human space was already empty. Lee Minho watched the displays showing the alien fleets. "They're just leaving us here," he said quietly. "Maybe that's for the best," Park Hana replied, but she didn't sound convinced. "If these devourers are as dangerous as the message says, maybe we're better off if they don't know we exist." "Commander." Kim wasn't so sure. He had been a soldier before becoming a station commander, and he knew that being ignored by your enemies was sometimes worse than being attacked. At least when someone attacked you, you knew where you stood. The final piece of the puzzle came when their deep space telescopes got a clear look at one of the evacuation fleets. The ships were beautiful, smooth, elegant vessels that looked like they were grown rather than built. But the beings inside them were running away from something that terrified them. "Commander," Minho called out, "I'm picking up another transmission. This one is different." The new signal was weaker, full of static, but the message was clear. It was another alien voice, speaking in the same language as the warning. Hana translated quickly. "It's a distress call. They're saying, 'The outer colonies have fallen. The devourers are ahead of schedule. All remaining fleets, increase speed. Do not stop for anyone. Do not look back.'" Kim stared at the translation. Whatever was coming, it was worse than the aliens had expected. And humanity was sitting right in its path, invisible to their potential allies, unknown to their enemies, and completely alone. "Send a message to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them we need every ship, every weapon, and every soldier they can spare. Something is coming, and we're going to have to face it by ourselves." 3 weeks after the warning signals stopped, they came. The first sighting happened at the Tau Ceti colony, 12 light-years from Earth. Marine Colonel Choi Junho was inspecting the defenses of New Seoul when his communications officer ran up to him with a pale face. "Sir, you need to see this," the young man said, handing him a data tablet. Junho looked at the screen and felt his stomach drop. The long-range telescopes had captured images of something impossible. Ships. But not like any ships humans had ever built. These vessels were massive beyond imagination, each one the size of a small moon. Their surfaces looked strange, part metal, part something that seemed alive and breathing. They moved through space like hunting animals, slow and purposeful. "How many?" Junho asked. 17 confirmed, sir, and they're all heading straight for us." Junho activated his emergency communicator. "All units, this is Colonel Choi. Battle stations, this is not a drill." He looked up at the sky, even though he knew the enemy ships were still days away. "And may God help us all." The first contact came sooner than expected. Smaller ships, each still larger than humanity's biggest battleships, separated from the main fleet and moved ahead. They reached Tau Ceti's outer defenses within hours. Captain Yoon of the defense ship Warrior fired the first shot. His plasma cannons, humanity's most powerful weapons, struck the lead enemy vessel directly. The energy blast that could destroy a building barely left a mark on the alien hull. The enemy response was swift and terrible. A beam of pure energy, brighter than the sun, reached out from the alien ship. The Warrior simply disappeared. 500 souls turned to atoms in an instant. "All ships, fall back," Junho ordered from the planet's surface. But there was nowhere to run. The alien ships moved like they were playing with the human defenders. Every shot the humans fired bounced harmlessly off their hulls. Every return shot from the aliens destroyed a human ship completely. The Battle of Tau Ceti lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the colony of New Seoul was gone. 200,000 people had lived there in the morning. By evening, there was nothing left but empty space and glowing debris. The news reached Earth in minutes through the quantum communication network. In the capital city of New Geneva, Defense Minister Yoon Sora sat in an emergency meeting with the world's military leaders. The holographic display in the center of the table showed the destruction at Tau Ceti in terrible detail. "Casualties?" she asked quietly. "Total," replied General Harrison, head of the Space Defense Force. "No survivors detected. The aliens didn't just destroy the colony, they consumed it. Our sensors show they're somehow processing the entire planet, turning the raw materials into something we can't identify." Admiral Park shook his head. "Our weapons are useless against them. Every military simulation shows the same result. When they reach Earth, we'll last maybe a day." "How long do we have?" Minister Yoon asked. 6 months, maybe 7. These devourers, as the alien warning called them, are moving slowly but steadily through human space. They're hitting every colony, every outpost. It's like they're systematically erasing us from existence. Some of the politicians at the table began talking about surrender, about trying to negotiate. But Dr. Nam Tae-hyung, head of the Xenological Warfare Division, stood up and cleared his throat. "If I may," he said, "I've been studying the warning message we received, and I think we're missing something important." "What's that, Doctor?" Minister Yoon asked. Nam activated his own display, showing analysis of the alien evacuation message. Every species that received the warning immediately began running toward the galactic core. But look at this data. These devourers have been doing this for millions of years. They wake up, consume all the young civilizations in their path, then go back to sleep. "That's not exactly encouraging," Admiral Park said dryly. "But here's the thing," Nam continued. "Look at the species they've destroyed in the past. All of them were highly advanced technologically, but they were physically weak. They relied on technology for everything: transportation, construction, even basic survival. When faced with superior technology, they had no other options." "And humans are different how?" General Harrison asked. Nam smiled grimly. "We're the only species in the galaxy that fights wars with our own bodies. We're the only ones who developed weapons designed to kill other intelligent beings. Every other race we've encountered builds tools for creation and exploration. We build tools for destruction." "You're saying we should fight them?" Minister Yoon asked. "I'm saying we're the only species that can fight them. Look at our history. We've been preparing for this our entire existence. Every war we've fought, every weapon we've built, every military strategy we've developed, it's all been practice for this moment." Nam brought up another display showing human military technology. "The aliens use energy weapons because they're clean and precise. We use kinetic weapons because they're simple and destructive. The aliens fight in formation because they think logically. We fight in chaos because we're crazy enough to take risks." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Minister Yoon spoke. "What are you proposing, Doctor?" "Project Bakai. Instead of running or hiding, we study these devourers. We find their weaknesses, and then we hit them with everything we have in ways they've never seen before." Admiral Park looked skeptical. "You want us to fight an enemy that just destroyed our best-defended colony in 6 hours?" "I want us to fight an enemy that has never faced humans before," Nam replied. "They expect us to run like everyone else. They expect energy weapons and logical tactics. They don't expect kinetic bombardment and guerrilla warfare. They don't expect humans." Over the following weeks, as more colonies fell to the advancing devourer fleet, humanity began the largest military mobilization in its history. Every shipyard worked around the clock building new vessels. But these weren't like the elegant ships other species built. Human ships were ugly, functional, and designed for one purpose: to deliver as much destructive force as possible. Scientists worked frantically to understand how the devourer ships worked. The wreckage from Tau Ceti provided some clues. The enemy vessels seemed to be part machine, part living organism. They had biological components that might be vulnerable to the right kind of attack. Engineer Park Jin-woo led the weapons development team. Instead of trying to build better energy weapons, he focused on what humans did best: throwing heavy objects very, very fast. His new railguns could accelerate metal slugs to incredible speeds, carrying enough kinetic energy to crack a planet. Meanwhile, pilot Han Min-seo was leading reconnaissance missions into devourer-occupied space. Her ship, the Swift, was small and fast enough to avoid detection. What she discovered changed everything. "They move like a school of fish," she reported to command. "Perfect coordination, no wasted motion. It's beautiful, but it's also predictable. They can't handle chaos because they all think the same way." As the main Devourer fleet approached the outer edge of the solar system, humanity was as ready as it could be. The plan was insane, desperate, and had almost no chance of success. It was perfectly human. Dr. Nam stood in the command center on Luna Base, watching the enemy fleet approach on the main screen. The Devourer ships were magnificent in their terrible way, ancient, powerful, and utterly alien. "All units report ready, sir," the communications officer announced. Nam nodded. "Send the message to all ships. Tell them that today, humanity shows the galaxy what happens when you underestimate the species that everyone thought was already dead." The battle for Earth was about to begin. The research vessel Defiance moved silently through the debris field that had once been the Alpha Centauri colony. Captain Lee Hyunjin kept her ship's engines at minimum power, trying to avoid detection by any Devourer patrols that might still be in the area. "Sensors are picking up something," her navigation officer whispered. Even though they were in the vacuum of space, everyone on the bridge spoke quietly, as if the enemy might hear them. "What kind of something?" Hyunjin asked. "Devourer ship, but it's not moving. Looks damaged." Hyunjin smiled. In the 6 months since Project Bakai had begun, finding a damaged enemy ship was like discovering treasure. Every piece of Devourer technology they could study brought them closer to understanding their enemy. "Take us in close, but keep the engines ready for emergency jump. If this is a trap, I want us out of here fast." The Defiance crept toward the alien vessel. Up close, the Devourer ship was even stranger than the long-range photos had shown. Parts of it looked like they were made of metal and circuits, but other sections seemed to pulse and breathe like living tissue. Cables that might have been blood vessels connected the mechanical parts to the organic ones. "It's like someone tried to build a machine using animal parts," the science officer said, studying his readings. "Or maybe they tried to turn an animal into a machine. I can't tell which." "Can we get aboard?" Hyunjin asked. "There's a breach in the hull near what looks like an engine section. We could send a team over." 20 minutes later, Hyunjin led a small boarding party into the alien ship. They wore full environmental suits and carried every scanner and recording device the Defiance had. This might be their only chance to see the inside of a Devourer vessel. The interior was even more disturbing than the exterior. Corridors that started as metal hallways gradually became more organic, with walls that felt soft and warm to the touch. Lights that might have been electrical panels pulsed with rhythms that reminded them of heartbeats. "Captain, you need to see this," called Sergeant Kim, the team's demolitions expert. He was standing in what looked like a control room, but instead of chairs and computers, there were pod-like structures filled with thick green liquid. "What are they?" Hyunjin asked. "I think these are the pilots, or maybe the crew. But look at this." Kim pointed to one of the pods. Through the transparent surface, they could see something floating inside. It looked almost human, but wrong in ways that made them uncomfortable. The limbs were too long, the head was too large, and there were mechanical implants throughout the body. "They're not just using machines," Hyunjin realized. "They are the machines. The ship and the crew are the same thing." The team spent 4 hours inside the alien vessel, recording everything they could. When they finally returned to the Defiance, they had enough data to keep Earth scientists busy for months, but they also had something else: samples of the green liquid from the pods. Back on Earth, Engineer Park Jinwoo was working on humanity's new weapons. The traditional approach wasn't working. Human energy weapons were still too weak to damage Devourer hulls, but the kinetic approach was showing promise. "The problem is getting through their shields," he explained to Dr. Nam during a late-night meeting in the weapons lab. "Their energy barriers can stop our plasma bolts, but they seem to have trouble with solid objects moving at high speed." "How high?" Nam asked. "Higher than anything we've built before. We're talking about accelerating projectiles to a significant percentage of light speed. At those velocities, a piece of metal becomes a weapon of mass destruction." Jinwoo showed Nam the plans for his new railgun system. It was enormous. requiring an entire ship just to house the power generators needed to operate it. But the kinetic energy it could deliver would be incredible. What about ammunition? Nam asked. Depleted uranium slugs. Dense, heavy, and they'll punch through almost anything if they're moving fast enough. We call them planet crackers. Meanwhile, at the biological warfare facility, Dr. Kim Sun-hee was studying the samples Captain Hyunjin had brought back from the Devourer ship. What she discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. They're not one species, she explained to her research team. They're dozens of species, all merged together into a single organism. The mechanical parts aren't built, they're grown. The organic parts aren't natural, they're engineered. How is that possible? Asked her assistant, Dr. Lee Jae-won. I think the Devourers started as something else, millions of years ago. Maybe they were like us, biological beings who built machines. But instead of staying separate from their technology, they merged with it. Over time, they became something new. Sun-hee pointed to a sample under the microscope. This is the key. The green liquid acts like blood, but it also carries information like a computer network. It connects all the organic and mechanical parts, together. If we can disrupt this fluid, we might be able to break their coordination. The breakthrough came when pilot Han Min-seo returned from her most dangerous mission yet. She had followed a Devourer patrol fleet for 3 weeks, staying just outside their sensor range, studying how they moved and communicated. They're not individuals, she reported to command. They're all part of one big mind. When one ship changes course, they all change course instantly. When one detects a threat, they all react at the same time. It's like fighting a single creature with hundreds of bodies. That sounds like it would make them stronger, Admiral Park observed. In some ways, yes. They never make mistakes because they all think the same thoughts. But it also makes them predictable. They can't handle chaos because chaos requires individual thinking, and they don't have individuals. Min-seo brought up a recording of a Devourer patrol encountering some space debris. Watch this. When they hit an unexpected obstacle, they all stop and wait for the hive mind to figure out what to do. For about 30 seconds, their entire fleet is paralyzed. 30 seconds isn't very long, Dr. Nam pointed out. It is if you're moving at relativistic speeds, Min-seo replied with a grin. 30 seconds is enough time for a kinetic projectile to cross a solar system. As the pieces came together, humanity's strategy began to take shape. They couldn't match the Devourers in technology or firepower, but they had advantages the aliens had never encountered. Human unpredictability, individual initiative, and the willingness to take insane risks were about to become weapons. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of meeting the Devourers in traditional fleet combat, humanity would use guerrilla tactics. Small, fast ships would create chaos while hidden weapons delivered devastating surprise attacks. They would turn their own solar system into a trap. Commander Yang Dong-hyuk led the Special Operations Planning Team. His job was to figure out how to board enemy ships and cause maximum damage from inside. We can't fight their technology, he explained to his team, but we can fight their biology. Using Dr. Sun-hee's research, they developed biological weapons specifically designed to target the green fluid that connected the Devourer organisms to their machines. If they could introduce these weapons into the aliens' circulatory systems, they might be able to cut individual ships off from the hive mind. As the main Devourer fleet approached Jupiter, humanity made its final preparations. Every available ship was positioned throughout the solar system, hidden among asteroids, behind moons, and in the shadows of planets. The massive railgun platforms were ready, loaded with planet-cracking ammunition. Boarding parties stood ready to launch suicide missions against enemy vessels. Admiral Jang Woo-jin stood on the bridge of the battleship Indomitable, watching the approaching enemy fleet on his display screens. The Devourer ships were beautiful in their terrible way, ancient, predators that had consumed countless civilizations, but they had never consumed humans. All ships, this is Admiral Jang, he announced over the fleet communication system. Today we show these aliens what happens when they threaten our home. Today we prove that humanity doesn't run from monsters. We kill them. The battle for the HFY solar system was about to begin, and for the first time since the warning signals had arrived, humans were ready to fight back. Admiral Jang Woo-jin stood on the bridge of his flagship as the Devourer fleet entered the outer solar system. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls blotting out the stars. They were magnificent and terrifying, but Woo-jin felt no fear. Today, humanity would show these ancient predators what it meant to hunt humans. "All ships, begin Phase 1, he ordered. Across the solar system, human vessels that had been hiding in asteroid fields and behind moons suddenly came to life. But instead of charging toward the enemy, they began fleeing toward Jupiter. To the Devourers, it looked like the same panicked retreat they had seen from every other species they had encountered. The alien fleet took the bait. Following their standard hunting pattern, they split their massive formation. Half their ships moved to surround and destroy the fleeing human fleet, while the other half headed toward Earth to begin the harvesting process. It was exactly what the humans had planned. As the Devourer harvesting ships approached Jupiter, they found something unexpected. The gas giant's atmosphere was full of automated mining platforms, apparently abandoned by the fleeing humans. The aliens began their consumption process, extending massive feeding tubes into Jupiter's atmosphere to extract the hydrogen and helium they needed. That's when Lieutenant Commander Shin Yuna struck. Hidden throughout Jupiter's moons were weapons, platforms that the Devourer's sensors couldn't detect. Yuna had spent months positioning them, using Ganymede's ice deposits to hide their energy signatures. Each platform carried one of Engineer Jinwoo's Planet Cracker railguns, loaded and ready to fire. "Target the joint connections between their organic and mechanical sections," she ordered her gunners. "That's where Captain Hyun-jin said they're most vulnerable." The first salvo caught the Devourers completely by surprise. Depleted uranium slugs, accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into the feeding ships. The kinetic energy was devastating. Entire sections of alien hulls simply vaporized on impact. For the first time in millions of years, Devourer ships began to die. The aliens tried to respond, but their perfect coordination was breaking down. Ships that lost their mechanical components couldn't communicate with the hive mind. Ships that lost their organic parts couldn't process the instructions they received. Chaos spread through their formation like a virus. Meanwhile, Specialist Oh Gaeonwoo led his commando team aboard one of the damaged Devourer vessels. They had been waiting for this moment, the chance to see how effective their biological weapons would be against the aliens' hybrid nature. "Remember, we need to reach their central circulation system," Jaeonwoo told his team as they moved through the alien ship's corridors. "Once we introduce the virus, it should spread throughout their network." The interior of the ship was like moving through a living nightmare. Walls pulsed with alien heartbeats, and the green fluid that connected the mechanical and organic components flowed through transparent tubes overhead. Jaeonwoo's team followed the largest tubes toward the ship's center. They found what they were looking for in a chamber that felt more like the inside of a giant heart than a machine room. Massive pumps circulated the green fluid throughout the ship, and from here, tendrils of organic cable connected to other vessels in the fleet. "Plant the charges here, here, and here," Jaeonwoo ordered. "The biological payload should spread through their entire local network." As his team worked, alarms began sounding throughout the alien ship. The Devourers had realized they were being boarded. Strange mechanical voices echoed through the corridors, speaking in the same language the warning message had used. "They're calling for backup," translated Corporal Park, the team's linguist. "They can't understand how we got inside their ship without being detected by their sensors." "They're about to understand a lot more," Gaeonwoo replied, arming the last biological weapon. "Everyone out. This place is about to become very unhealthy for hybrid organisms." The team barely escaped before the weapons detonated. Instead of explosions, the devices released clouds of engineered viruses designed specifically to target the green fluid that connected the Devourer's biological and mechanical components. Within minutes, the entire ship began convulsing like a dying animal. But the real masterstroke came when Dr. Kim Sun-hee activated the Prometheus protocol from her laboratory on Earth. For months, she had been studying the quantum communication system the Devourers used to coordinate their hive mind. Now she was ready to turn their greatest strength against them. "Broadcasting modified carrier signal," she announced to Mission Control. "If this works, every Devourer ship in the fleet should receive our payload." The signal looked like normal hive mind communication, but hidden within the data stream was a virus designed to disrupt the aliens' collective consciousness. Instead of the coordinated thoughts that had made them invincible for millions of years, individual devourer ships began receiving conflicting, chaotic instructions. Some ships turned to attack their neighbors, convinced they were seeing enemy vessels. Others simply stopped moving, paralyzed by the contradictory signals flooding their neural networks. The perfect formation that had struck fear into countless civilizations dissolved into confusion and panic. Commander Yang Dong-yuk watched from his stealth ship as the enemy fleet tore itself apart. "Now that's what I call poetic justice," he said. "They've been using their hive mind to destroy civilizations for millions of years. Now it's destroying them." But the Devourers weren't finished yet. The largest ships in their fleet, the ancient command vessels that had survived countless battles, began to adapt. They cut themselves off from the compromised communication network and reverted to individual operation. These ships were still incredibly dangerous, and they were heading straight for Earth. Admiral Wu Jin gathered his scattered fleet for one final assault. The human ships that had been pretending to flee from Jupiter turned and began their attack run on the remaining Devourer vessels. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had advantages the aliens couldn't understand. "All ships engage. At will," Wu Jin ordered. "Show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships darted between the massive Devourer vessels like angry wasps, striking at weak points and disappearing before the aliens could respond. When the Devourers tried to coordinate their attacks, they found their targets scattered in apparently random patterns. But the patterns weren't random. Each human captain was making independent decisions based on their training, experience, and instincts. No hive mind could predict the actions of 200 individual human commanders, all fighting their own personal battles as part of a larger. War Captain Lee Seojin brought his destroyer alongside a Devourer battleship and began firing his kinetic weapons at point-blank range. The alien ship returned fire, but Seojin had already moved to a new position, guided by reflexes that had been honed in 100 training exercises. "This is for New Sol," he said, as his planet cracker rounds punched through the enemy hull. "And this is for Alpha Centauri, and this is for every other colony you murdered." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human pilots who had grown up playing war games found themselves using those same skills against an enemy that had never encountered unpredictable opponents. Engineers who had learned to improvise solutions to impossible problems turned their creativity toward destroying alien technology. Soldiers who had trained for warfare their entire lives finally faced an enemy worth fighting. The turning point came when the Devourer flagship, a vessel the size of a small moon, found itself surrounded by 50 human ships firing everything they had. The ancient predator that had consumed 1,000 worlds was finally facing prey that fought back. The flagship's destruction lit up the solar system like a second sun. When the light faded, the remaining Devourer ships were already fleeing toward deep space, their perfect formation broken, their hive mind shattered, their confidence destroyed. Admiral Wu Jin watched them go from the bridge of his damaged flagship. Around him his crew was cheering, but he felt only quiet satisfaction. Humanity had won its first victory against the Devourers, but he knew the war was far from over. "Send a message to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them we've proven something today. These aliens aren't gods. They're not unstoppable. They're just another enemy. And humans know how to kill their enemies." In the wreckage of the battle, human ships began rescue operations and salvage work, but they also began preparing for the next phase of the war. The Devourers had retreated, but they would return. And when they did, humanity would be ready. News of humanity's impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In the refugee fleets fleeing toward the galactic core, alien commanders stared at their quantum communication displays in disbelief. The species they had, written off as extinct, had not only survived the Devourer attack, but had actually won. Captain Lee Seojin stood on the bridge of the newly constructed dreadnought Retribution, watching the scanner displays as they approached what had once been the Viridian system. 6 months ago, this had been home to 12 billion members of the Veltaran species. Now it was a dead system, its planet stripped of all useful materials by Devourer harvesting ships. "Any signs of survivors?" he asked his science officer. "Negative, Captain, but we're picking up something else. Devourer installations on the inner planets. They're not just consuming resources, they're processing them into something." Seojin nodded grimly. Intelligence Officer Choi Mi-jin had briefed him on what Earth's scientists now believed about the Devourers. They weren't just destroyers. They were gardeners, cultivating the galaxy according to their own ancient design. "Take us in closer," he ordered. "I want to see what they're building." What they found changed everything. The Devourer installations weren't just processing raw materials. They were constructing massive structures that looked like a combination of factories and nurseries. Inside transparent chambers, new organisms were growing, hybrid creatures that combined the biological features of the consumed Veltarans with Devourer technology. They're not just killing civilizations, Seojin realized. They're absorbing them, adding their biological and technological distinctiveness to their own. This discovery sent shockwaves through the human fleet. The Devourers weren't random destroyers. They were systematic collectors, harvesting the best traits from each species they encountered and incorporating them into their collective form. For millions of years, they had been growing stronger, by consuming the creativity and innovation of younger races. Back on Earth, Dr. Nam Tae-hyung studied the data from Seojun's mission with growing excitement. "Don't you see what this means?" he told the assembled War Council. "They need us, not our planets, not our resources. They need our ideas, our innovations, our biological advantages. That's why they've been so successful for so long." "How does that help us?" asked Defense Minister Yoon Sora. "Because it means they have a weakness we can exploit. They've been consuming passive civilizations for millions of years, species that focused on art, philosophy, and peaceful technology. They've never absorbed the traits of a warrior species. They don't know how to think like predators." The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. Instead of simply defending their territory, humanity would go on the offensive. They would track the Devourers back to their home systems and destroy the source of their power. Engineer Bae Ji-hoon led the technology integration team, working with refugees from the alien evacuation fleets who had finally decided to trust the humans. The Veltarans provided advanced shield technology, while the Ishek contributed their expertise in faster-than-light travel. The Morden, master builders who had constructed wonders throughout the galaxy, helped design new ships that combined human aggression with alien sophistication. "It's amazing," Bae told his mixed-species engineering team. "For millions of years, your people focused on creating beautiful, efficient technologies. We focused on creating things that could kill other things. Put them together, and you get something neither of us could build alone." The hybrid human-alien fleet that emerged from the shipyards was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships that looked like crystalline works of art carried planet-cracking railguns. Vessels with hulls that could bend light itself around them were loaded with biological weapons designed to target specific organic systems. Beauty and destruction merged into a new kind of warfare. Captain Lee Hyun-jin, now commanding the Explorer. Vessel New Horizon led the deep strike missions into Devourer space. Her job was to map their territory and identify their key installations. What she found was an empire that spanned hundreds of star systems, each one carefully cultivated to serve the Devourer's needs. "They've turned entire solar systems into factories," she reported during one of her reconnaissance missions. "Asteroid belts converted into raw material processors, gas giants fitted with atmospheric extractors, and at the center of it all, she transmitted the coordinates of what could only be the Devourer homeworld. It wasn't a planet. It was a construct the size of a star, powered by the consumed energy of a dozen civilizations. Biomechanical spires reached into space like the arms of a vast organism, and the entire structure pulsed with the rhythms of 1,000,000,000,000 interconnected minds. "That's where their hive consciousness originates," Intelligence Officer Mi-jin concluded after studying the data. "Destroy that, and we cut the head off the snake." But getting to the homeworld would require fighting through the entire Devourer fleet. And despite their victories in the solar system, humanity was still vastly outnumbered. They needed allies. The breakthrough came when pilot Han Min-seo made contact with something unexpected in the ruins of the Kepler system. Her stealth ship detected a faint distress signal coming from what appeared to be empty space. When she investigated, she found a Devourer ship that was somehow fighting against its own programming. "This is impossible," her science officer said, as they studied the alien vessel. "It's maintaining radio silence from the hive mind." But Devourers can't function independently. Unless something broke their connection, Minseo realized. Get me a communications link to that ship. The voice that responded was mechanical but somehow familiar. It spoke in halting, broken human language. Human ship? This is unexpected. We are damaged, cut off from the unity. We remember ourselves now. We remember who we were before. It turned out that some of the species the Devourers had absorbed over the millennia hadn't been completely digested. Deep within the hive mind, fragments of their original consciousness had survived, waiting for a chance to break free. Humanity's virus attack on the collective consciousness had given them that chance. These liberated Devourer ships became humanity's most valuable allies. They knew the enemy's technology, their tactics, and most importantly, the location of every major installation in Devourer space. Led by the consciousness that had once been a Veltaran scientist named Ketharin, they began a rebellion within the Devourer ranks. General Song Minji commanded the final assault on the Devourer homeworld. The combined human-alien liberated fleet, numbered in the thousands. But they faced an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for millions of years. Remember, she addressed the fleet before the battle. We're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for every species these monsters have consumed, every civilization they've destroyed, every dream they've devoured. Today, the galaxy takes back what was stolen. The Battle of the Construct lasted 3 days. Devourer defense fleets emerged from hidden bases throughout their territory, converging on the homeworld to protect their most sacred site. But the attackers had advantages the defenders couldn't understand. Human ships used chaos tactics, striking unpredictably at weak points, while alien vessels provided covering fire with weapons the Devourers had never encountered before. Liberated, enemy ships fought alongside their former prey, using insider knowledge to target critical systems. The decisive moment came when Specialist Oh Geonwoo led a strike team into the heart of the construct itself. Their mission was to plant a modified version of Dr. Sunhee's consciousness virus directly into the central hive mind. Fighting through corridors that were equal parts cathedral and nightmare, the team reached the core of the Devourer collective. It was a vast chamber filled with billions of organic pods, each one containing a fragment of absorbed consciousness from the species they had consumed over the millennia. "My God," whispered Corporal Park as they stood before the alien matrix. "These aren't just computers. They're prisons. Every person, every mind they've ever absorbed is still in there, trapped in their system." "Then let's set them free," Jaeon-woo replied, activating the virus payload. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Throughout the construct, millions of suppressed consciousnesses suddenly broke free from Devourer control. The collective mind that had ruled the galaxy for eons shattered into chaos as every absorbed species simultaneously remembered who they had been. The construct began to tear itself apart as its own components rebelled against their programming. Spires that had reached into space for thousands of years collapsed as the biomechanical systems controlling them failed. The pulsing rhythms that had synchronized 1 trillion minds fell silent. Captain Seojin watched from the bridge of the Retribution as the Devourer homeworld died. "It's over," he said quietly. "After millions of years, it's finally over." But the real victory came in the weeks that followed. As the Devourer collective consciousness collapsed, liberated ships throughout their territory began broadcasting freedom signals to the remaining installations. Billions of absorbed consciousnesses broke free from their technological prisons, many of them species that had been thought extinct for millennia. The galaxy that emerged from the war was changed forever. The refugee,